Hello, and welcome to the Pinkiesdown Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Mejia. In celebration of our partnership with the Women in Wine Association, today we are joined by the amazing women of Union Wine Company. We are also lucky to have our very own Amy Carr leading the conversation on today's podcast. We hope you enjoy.
My name's Amy Carr. I'm the Logistics and Compliance / Customer Service Supervisor here at Union, joining Marcus today as your co-host on this podcast. I think, Marcus, you can introduce yourself as well, and then maybe we'll just go around and have everyone introduce themselves and just quickly describe their title and what they do at Union.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Marcus Mejia. As Amy said, I'm the marketing associate here at Union Wine Company. Also the humble host of the Pinkiesdown Podcast for Union Wine. So thank you all for joining us. Excited and grateful to be able to be on this call with you all today. So thanks.
All right. I'm just going to go clockwise from the top with who I see on my screen. So Christy, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I'm Christy Drew Pruitt, Southwest Region Manager. We've got 9 states underneath me, so that's about it.
Awesome. Ellie?
Hi, I'm Ellie Ritchie, and I'm the HR coordinator at Union Wine Company. In all things HR.
Awesome. Meredith?
I am Meredith McGough, and I am winemaker at Union Wine Company.
All right. Jenna?
My name is Jenna Morse, and I am the Inventory Control and Sustainability Specialist here at Union Wine Company.
Awesome. Joan?
Hi, I'm Joan Olbrantz. I'm Marketing Operations Manager.
AKA Mom.
Mom for Union Wine.
Alexandra?
Hey, my name is Alexandra Sharpnick, and I am the Shipping and Administrative Specialist at Union Wine.
Awesome. Joanna?
Hi, I'm Joanna Engel. I am the Assistant Winemaker at Union Wine Company.
Awesome. Cassidy? I don't think I've met you
Hi.
at all yet. Hi.
I'm new. My name is Cassidy, and I'm a cellar hand too at Union Wine Company.
Awesome. And then Colby. Oh no. Colby, can you hear me? Okay, we'll come back to Colby. Shannon?
Hi, I'm Shannon McGill. I am the Northeast Sales Manager for Union Wine Company, and I too have 9 states that I manage here in the Northeast.
Awesome. Silka?
I am Silka Shu, and I'm the Digital Marketing Specialist at Union. I will reintroduce myself. My name is Colby Childers, and I am the enologist here at Union.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourself. Kind of why we wanted to have this podcast is to sort of take the opportunity to educate people on kind of women in wine and why that is a thing. Maybe challenges we face, but also changes that we might be seeing within the industry, hopes for where the industry is headed. And all right, awesome. Okay, on that note, I am hoping to hear from everyone a little bit about, I guess we kind of skipped a personal interest outside of the winery, but I'd love to hear people's interests outside of the winery, and also then experience within the wine industry, how long you've sort of been in the industry itself, and maybe where you came from, if you did come from somewhere else beforehand.
Go,
Cool.
Joe.
Well, I'll give it a
Go
start.
for it, Joanna. Yeah.
So some interests that I have outside of the winery, I typically think of myself as kind of an 80-year-old woman in like a 30-something-year-old body. I love tasks that like people really more or less associate with the grandmothers, like cross stitching. And one harvest, I taught myself how to knit, and I made a really horrible sweater. And currently, I'm teaching myself how to crochet. So those are some things that I do in my spare time outside of here. I joined the wine industry in 2016 and did some harvest hopping, which is basically following the wine harvest between the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. So not getting a break from the joys of wine production during its busiest time of the year. And prior to getting into wine production, I considered myself a professional student, and I actually hold a doctorate in poultry science. So that was my life prior to the wine industry. So I would love to learn a little bit more about Shannon.
All right. Outside of the wine industry, I love yoga. I try to make sure I get to practice at least a couple of times a week. It helps keep me sane most of the time. And I cook and entertain a lot. I'm in my kitchen right now. I'm usually in my kitchen, and I've got a 10-year-old son, so we have dinner parties a lot with his friends and their parents, and that's a big part of what I do when I'm not working. I have been in the industry 20 years now, really closer to 30 if you count all the time I was in the restaurant business as a teenager. So this has been it since pretty much right out of college. And yeah, that's what I do. I'm going to pass this over to Joan.
All right, I'm unmuting. Let's see, outside the winery, I also love yoga. I've been doing that for many, many years. I walk a lot. I have 2 grown girls, one that's living in my house working and one that's in Bend. So would love to get together with them doing whatever it is we do, anything. Let's see, I don't think I have any other outside of the wine interests that are super interesting. I started at Union 5 years ago, just about now, a couple more weeks, and that was my introduction to the wine business. So I've been learning on the fly for 5 years, anything and everything I possibly can in my role. So it's been awesome. All right, I'll hand off to Colby.
So I'm very similar to Joanna. I am a grandma. I love doing puzzles and running, and just being at home with my cat and reading a book. That's kind of about it. If I have free time, which I usually don't, I sometimes will go on hikes or kind of explore Portland. Since I'm still semi-new to Portland, I like to think I am, even though I've been here for almost a year now. There's a lot of hiking around the area, so I try to do that as often as I can. I've actually been exposed to the wine industry my entire life. My dad worked in the cellar for 30 plus years. My mom has been in tasting rooms, and I've had 2 of my older brothers have worked at in the cellar before or in a bottling line for the summer. I've also had aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody you can possibly think of work in wine. And that's actually not what I wanted to do. I was planning on going into geology and studying rocks. But then I went home and I liked winemaking much more. And I was able to do harvest hopping as well. So I was able to go down to New Zealand and then California before I ended up in Walla Walla for 2 years. And then I got this job about 9 months ago. And then I'm going to pass it over to Cassidy.
So some of my hobbies outside of the winery are lots of hiking, mountain biking. I'm currently doing skiing this weekend. That's a big one for me. Um, I recently graduated in 2020 from the Washington State University Viticulture and Enology program. And my time there was a bachelor's, so 4 years. But during that time, I did a couple harvests while in college. And then after college, went down to California. And then I recently just did my last internship with Soder. That's what brought me to the Willamette area. And then I have been working with Union for about a month now. Before wine, I thought I wanted to be a nurse. And then I decided that was not for me. I worked as a CNA for a while and then decided to change career paths. Took a year off from school, moved to Montana, worked as an outfitting guide, taking people on horseback rides, and then started to get into wine just reading books. And they had just built a new facility in Washington that St. Michelle funded, and yeah, sparked my interest, and I never looked back. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And I am gonna pass it to Ellie.
Okay. So let's see what I love to do outside of winery. Love the outdoors, so I'm usually out running. Love to run around where my neighborhood where I live. Then on the weekends, I love to spend time with my family. I have two boys, 14 and 10, and we'll go explore various places in Oregon to go hiking, often against their will, but they'll learn to love it soon enough. I did go skiing last weekend. Hadn't been skiing in 10 years, and I made it safely down the mountain without falling, which I was pretty proud of myself for doing. I'd love to do it more often, and it might have sparked my interest in skiing, and we'll get back at it. But having a family obviously demands a lot of my time, and can't get to do some of the things I love to do. I've been in the wine world for 5 years. It started with working at Union, so I've been here almost 5 years. I've been in HR though for about almost 15. Have worked with small companies my entire career, I guess you could say, and sort of developing their HR program, because I have always been I've always worked at companies as their HR department of one, and just sort of helping to build their HR department and processes and whatnot. And so, software development company I've worked for, and some other, like a technology company. And then Union happened to be very close to where I live, and loved the brand Underwood, and met the people at Union and immediately found love, and yeah, haven't looked back either. So great people in the industry. Let's see. I'll pass it to Merida.
All right. I'm going to do this the other way. I'm going to talk about work first. I have been in the wine industry professionally for 15 years, which makes me feel so much older than I think I am. And I decided that I wanted to make wine when I was in high school. My mom went on a trip to Napa with some friends and called me and was like, "Did you know you can go to college for wine?" So she likes to take credit for my entire career and life, which she should. She is my mother. But super lucky that it worked out as well as it did, because I think a lot of people who enter the wine industry see it as a very romantic job, even production, which is very physical and dirty and not what a lot of people think when they think of wine. But I love it, and so I've been at Union only since 2018. I used to run our packaging facility before I became winemaker here. And outside of work, I love to travel more than anything. If I could be a professional harvest hopper, which I mean, some people do. Some people work and travel back and forth between the northern and southern hemispheres until they are physically incapable of doing so. But that makes it difficult to have much of a life outside of work. So yeah, I love to travel. I love to run. I love to read. I love to spend time with my rabbit and my cats. And yeah, I think that's about it. I'm gonna pass it to Alexandra. You haven't gone yet?
No. I'm also gonna start with work. That sounds the flow sounded better to me. So I got into, I guess, wine and like food. I went to school for college for hospitality, and at my first restaurant, I just fell in love with it all, with the experience given, with the food and wine, and just how everything was created. And yeah, I just kind of went with that. And I went to school at UNLV, and I started working at Charlie Trotter's, and that's really when I started to understand wine and what it does to food and how it enhances the experience. And it really like changed my whole perspective on it. But then I left Las Vegas and moved around a few times. I started a family, started working at other restaurants like Zuni Cafe, which was great. And then my husband opened a food truck. So food and wine has been part of my life like the last decade. But I came to Union also about 5 years ago, doing shipping, which is nothing to do really with food or wine per se, as far as like, enjoying it. But I just heard so many great things about the company, and I wanted to get my foot in the door, and I knew, I could maybe find the right fit. And yeah, I've been here for 5 years and love being here, love working with everybody, and yeah, it's been great. And what I like to do outside of work, well, I obviously love to eat and drink wine because it's like a big part of my life. But I also like to balance it out with physical activity. I love to run. And I also have 2 little kids, so similar to what the other moms were saying, it takes up a lot of your time. Play dates are usually the priority of my weekend, and trying to give them, a good childhood and family experiences.
Who are you gonna pass it to, Alexandra?
Sorry, I'm so nervous. I look down. Who hasn't gone? Everyone on my
I think we have
Silka,
Silka, Jenna, and Christy.
Oh, and Jenna.
Okay, go Silka.
Hi. Yeah, I'll start too with kind of my interest in how I got into the wine industry. I worked at a tasting room in the Applegate Valley of Oregon in my early 20s, so was just sort of looking for a summer job. Worked in the tasting room for just under a year, but that kind of sparked my interest in learning more about wine and enjoying it. And there's so many kind of interesting things about it and all the different grape varieties. So I thought that was super cool. And after I left that job, moved back up to Portland to finish college. I was always kind of interested in that world. Finished up school with a background in graphic design and kind of went into the digital world of web design and marketing, and then the whole social media stuff came around and got sucked into that. And then, was kind of thinking that I wanted to be back in the wine world because it's great and wine's delicious. So yeah, an opportunity came at Union, and it's been a nice almost 3 years now. So yeah, so that's my journey, as they say on some TV shows. So outside of work in the wine world, like to watch good TV and films. Just went and saw my second film in a theater in the past 2 years last night, which was great. I have a young child as well, an 18-month-old, so that occupies a lot of my time. But I also recently moved out to the country with a little bit of Pinot grapes and a couple other random grape plants. So made our first vintage of wine this year with the help of some folks around the winery. Thanks. And yeah, so like to garden, like the outdoors, cycling, you also try to do a little yoga and whatnot whenever I can. My daughter now knows how to breathe deeply, so that's nice. Taught her yoga. Yeah, and then I guess still just drinking wine, outside of work. So yeah, Jenna, you're up.
So I guess I'll do work first as well. I came out to school here at University of Oregon and graduated, and then moved to Newburgh for a lacrosse coaching job, and that did not pay well, so had to supplement that income, and I could not figure out why all the jobs here were for wineries. So I slowly was introduced into the wine industry, and I worked in a tasting room first. That was wonderful. Got to talk to people all day, but also got a little old. And so then I came to Union there after that, which was really fun, and just yeah, it's been so much fun to work here and learn a little bit about everything. Outside of work, I like to hike and ski and just be outside constantly. A little bit of gardening here and there. I wouldn't say that I enjoy running. Like a lot of you guys said, I love to run, and it's like, I mean, I run, but I don't love it. But yeah, it's been just fun. To explore all the options that Oregon kind of has. I think, is Christy our last one?
I think so.
Bring it
home. Let's see. Actually, listening to all y'all, I think I may be the longest in the industry. I've been in the wine industry for about 16 years. Again, kind of like y'all, nothing that I intended to go into. I actually went to school for interpreting for the deaf. And that didn't make any money, social work, so no money. So ended up in medical field, like marketing and that kind of stuff. And then got to know someone in this field, and they said, come join us at a distributor. And I went, I know about Jack and tequila, know nothing about wine. Grew up in Texas, Bible Belt family, no one drinks. So my mom, even for years, when I finally did get in the industry, would only tell my family that we did have like some non-alcoholics and water that we sold at the distributor. So that's what she would tell everybody I did. So it's kind of funny. But then, yeah, so then I got into the industry and the distributor back in 2006 and worked my way on premise retail. Have seen so much changes in this industry in the last 16 years in such a positive way for females. I talk to my husband about it all the time because he's in the industry too. So I kind of give him that little jab of don't don't think what we do is, we have to work harder, actually, I think. So but that's kind of where I've been in the industry. I've been distributor, and then this is my second supplier to work for. Outside of work, I know y'all probably all hear this all the time, but I work out. Like, I just love to work out. Like, it's my stress reliever. I'm not a big fan of running. I try to run just because I hate cardio and I'm not very good at the endurance piece. I could lift weights all day, every day. I have actually a massive weight room upstairs in my house, and even told my husband he either has to start doing weights with me so I can start lifting heavier, or I'm going to go to a gym and hire a male trainer. He wasn't too happy with that one, so he's going to work out with me now. And let's see, I love my animals. I have 20 million animals. Joanna, I'm calling you on any chicken questions from now on. Now that I know that you have a poultry and science degree, I'm like, well, And then I have 3 kids. My oldest is 24, who has his own baby, so I'm a grandma. And then my youngest is 8, so I have 2 still at home. But yeah, that's me.
All right, that was awesome. I feel like I just learned so much about people that I had no idea. And I forgot that one of the most important purposes of this call is to get to know the women of wine. So thank you guys. All right, with that, I would love to talk about some of the challenges you might have faced in the wine industry, or just some common misconceptions that you run into. It is still a male-dominated industry, and it's interesting thinking about the different chunks of it. We have agriculture, we have production, and I deal with warehousing. Like, there are a lot of male-dominated little industries still within that. So do you want to touch on some of the challenges for sure? And then following up on that, we'll talk about some of the positive changes we've seen, and just kind of the direction you think that the industry is going. I am really curious to hear about challenges, because we have such a wide spectrum of people on this call, which I'm very excited about. We have people in marketing, we have people on the production side, and we have people on the sales side. So yeah, very curious just to hear what your experience has been.
I'll start, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't speak because
Please do.
I have been doing it. I've been in it for 16 years, so I've seen like this huge change. When I first started, you only, at the distributor, you only saw females in on-premise. They were never in the retail world. And you know, and it was, the retail world was a lot of old men, not, you know, sorry, old men, but it was a lot of old men. And you did have to deal with a lot of stares and comments and that type of stuff. You know, even to where when I decided to move to the retail side, everyone just kind of looked at me and went, why do you want to go to retail? Like, you'll give up your wine lunches. And even on the on-premise side, like, I remember interviewing females that would come in, they want to become a rep. And I'm like, you know, interviewing them, I'm like, why do you want to become a wine rep? They're like, oh, it's just so romantic and it's this and that. And I'm like, no, you're carrying cases of wine in 3-inch heels in the middle of winter, and the wind is blowing and your hair is doing this, and no one opens the door for you through downtown Fort Worth. Like, it's not romantic at all, you know, ever. But again, when I went to retail wine, everyone was shocked. There was only one other female on the retail world who had come from on-premise. So they really didn't think we understood on that side how to carry a case of wine or anything like that, that we ever even really carried a case of wine. And we did it while we were pregnant. I did it while I was pregnant many, many times. And I think I still remember, after interviewing to go to the retail world, one of the gentlemen who was on the panel walking down the stairs with the distributor, and I had a case of wine, just one case of wine, carrying it down the stairs in heels. And he stopped and he just looked at me and he goes, oh, okay. And I went, what? And he goes, you can carry that case of wine. I went, yeah. And I pulled it out and went, I can hand it out to you straight out too. You know, I was a little surprised that apparently we weren't supposed to have muscles to be able to do this.
Oh my gosh.
It was shocking. And again, everybody was like, but you're going to give up your wine lunches. And I'm like, yeah, but this is like more of the business. And even when you did go to retail wine, you really, same thing. You kind of had to prove yourself that you weren't just, it started being the part where women started getting those roles to tick a box. And you had to prove yourself that you weren't there because you were ticking a box. Like, you actually were hardworking. And again, with my last one, I'm sitting there pregnant and at an HEB as a manager, and we were doing a reset. And I was massively pregnant, sitting on the floor in a grocery store, and they drop a case and I just moved down the aisle, you know, so changing the wines out. You know, I would joke with my son, who did more, but you know, I was like, I just squatted for 5 hours, and he's like, well, I did 2 a days. I'm like, yeah, I just squatted for 5 hours. So I think that was a big one. You know, again, it was, and even when my husband and I started dating, when I was in on-premise, people were, oh, well, she must be pretty because she was on-premise. And it was like, you know, we do actually have brains, and we do work hard to do this, and
Right. Yeah. You're out there doing the work.
yeah, and it was much more male dominated. You really had to fight that good old boy, and you still do, a little bit here and there, but it is different. It is very different. It's nice seeing that that it has changed, and I think some of the things that were accepted in the past aren't fully accepted. I know it still happens a little bit here and there, but yeah, I've even had those conversations with my husband. I said, you kind of become what's the word? Numb sometimes.
Desensitized a little.
Yeah, you do. You become desensitized a lot with some things, I think, and where he's like, I can't believe that didn't bother you. And I'm like, baby, I heard so much in a bar at 10 a.m. from the drunk guy sitting there. I'm like,
yeah, absolutely.
Like,
so,
just gotta, okay.
Shannon, can I ask, is that similar to your experience in sales?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a lot of positive parts to it as well, but same, like when I started, I was on premise. We were the only females in the distributor. We were all really young. So same thing, like the distributors checking a box, like, okay, this is what we need to do. So over the course of 20 years, to see a lot of those women have stayed in the industry and have climbed the corporate ladder, I've seen a lot more women in leadership in the distributors, which is totally awesome to see. And, certainly more in supplier jobs too. So the diversity gets better and better. And I think with time and the diversity getting better and better, the old boys club starts to shrink down a little bit. But yeah, no, it's been brutal too. Like there's been some really hard days. There's inappropriate comments all the time. I mean, our job is to build relationships with people. So as you start to build kind of like a trust and a getting to know, some men will be like really comfortable just overstepping the bounds. And it's like, no, you're my customer. Like that's where this ends. I've had, business cards handed out where people are like, oh, great, now I have her phone number. And it's like, that's not what this is. So just stuff that I know men don't have to worry about. I've been the victim of sexual assault. Like it's not good all the time. But hopefully as time goes by, that'll keep getting better. And I think, back to why we need to do this, it's like we need our village. We need to talk about these kinds of things that are happening, because even for as long as I've been doing this and how comfortable and confident I think I am, when something like that happens, it's scary. And I don't want people to know that about me. I don't want to talk to the men who I really like and respect and be like, this is an experience I had, because it makes you feel small and weak, or at least it did for me. So that's why I think it's so important that we have each other and we can talk about these things, because it does happen, probably more than we know, because we're women and it's harder for us sometimes. But again, all that said, like there's so much really good stuff that happens too. Like I'm still here, I'm still doing this for a reason. So there is a lot of fun, cool, great people, but it's hard.
Yeah, my husband was shocked.
I mean, I think it happens more than.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories.
Yeah, and I was like,
probably especially in sales, I think, because we're out all the time.
Yeah,
and yeah.
Yeah, I told my husband that I would way back. I was like, I'd never want my daughters to go into this.
Wow, that's saying something.
Yeah, no, it's gotten bad, but it's been bad, but it is getting better. I love seeing that. I think some of the younger girls probably still have to go through it a little bit, but I hope not as much as they did. I hope.
Yeah. Meredith, were you gonna add something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it happens so much more than we realize, because we all just take it as a part of the job and a part of life. And it takes conversations like this for everyone to recognize that it happens to everyone and it's not just you, and it's not okay. I was also going to say, Christy, I loved your story about carrying wine up the stairs. My line is still, I'm stronger than I look. Like every cellar I've ever worked in, when, again, it's tough. It's that line between like I mean, I worked in a cellar in California where most of the cellar staff, all of the cellar staff was male, and they were trying to be polite. They wanted to help me carry things or drag hoses or pick heavy things up, and they thought they were being polite. And I was the bitch who was like, "No, I got it." But I mean, it's like being paid to work out. That's the benefit of the job. And I'm never going to be able to do it if I don't do it myself. But I mean, part of that, like part of the reason that I think I've been successful in this industry is because I'm like a tomboy and I've always had male friends and I've always gotten along really well with men. And so many of the women who succeeded earlier on, I mean, the generation before me in this industry, in production in particular, were successful because they played the game like men. And one of the really wonderful changes that I see are things like this, where we are actually developing the network of women in this industry and learning that we can rely on one another rather than feeling like we have to put all of our trust in men to make or break our careers. I mean, that said, I think it's important to recognize the allyship of men who have supported women in this industry, in all industries, because we don't make progress without the support of people already holding power. And so I've been really fortunate to have mentors, both male and female, who've helped me to get where I am. I mean, when I was thinking about challenges as a woman in the wine industry, I was like, well, self-doubt. I mean, I know everybody feels that way, but I think especially in some of these fields, I ran our packaging facility, and I grew up. My mom was a feminist. I grew up with my parents telling me I could do literally anything I wanted, but I somehow didn't think that I could understand the way that a machine worked. And the more time that I spent over there, the more I realized that it's not actually as complicated as they would like you to think that it is. Yeah, so I think it is getting better, but yeah, definitely still some challenges. I actually was talking to Jenna earlier today about some experiences with truck drivers.
Yes.
And again, parts of all of our jobs where we're still interacting with people who the company itself does not have control over the everyone that we interact with, even though I would love it. I was just saying yesterday that we should have a policy where we don't do business with any vendor where they call me hun or dear or sweetie or doll. And
would there be anybody left?
There would.
Plenty.
There for sure would. I did appreciate that all of the Union Wine Company men in the room agreed that was a totally reasonable bar. Yeah, Jenna, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I can reiterate so many of those experiences, but along the lines of like, women don't have the strength to do things. Where I worked in, direct to consumer areas for a few years, and the girls weren't allowed to go and change the kegs because we weren't strong enough. And but I wasn't willing to wait 25 minutes for the fellas to come and do it when I had a line of people waiting for like pints of beer. So I went back there and did it myself. Didn't always not get in trouble for doing that, but yeah, I can do things without messing it up. It's totally okay. I mean, yeah, we've dealt with truck drivers that don't think that, women should be driving forklifts to unload the trucks, and, because they're not as skilled at it, or, or just question our decisions because maybe we're, making decisions that we don't really know, or we're like too emotional. My biggest thing is when like people are too afraid to just have a really honest conversation because they think they're going to hurt my feelings. And it's like, no, right now, the reason I'm crying is because I'm not allowed to punch you in the face. because I just want you to give it to me straight. Let's have a real conversation and like get it over with and move on. But like when you can't have that straight conversation, it's so frustrating. And that's when I'm like emotional, I suppose. But yeah, I think in any male dominated industry, there's so many challenges to just prove yourself. And like Meredith said, with the self-doubt, it's always like, oh gosh, is this the day where they realize that I'm like flying by the seat of my pants? But it's like, I wouldn't be here if I couldn't do the job. Like just reminding yourself that like, I definitely earned this and, know my stuff. But absolutely, there are so many improvements. The number of like women in wine production now compared to even like 4 or 5 years ago is just astronomical. Like I know when we're getting applications for people to join our production team, a vast majority of them are women now. And I think it's really exciting to see that because, we can do it. We're strong, we're smart. We can do anything, anybody else can do. So I really enjoy seeing
And
that,
we
especially
have a
the fact
better
that
sense of taste and smell.
yes, and the fact that our winemaking team is 3/4 women, I think is pretty darn awesome and shows, a lot about Union Wine Company and its trust in hiring just awesome people and giving everybody equal opportunity. So that's my little 2 cents.
Love it. Yeah, you gotta talk yourself out of the imposter syndrome a lot.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, and we do it all while having kids. I don't know, Shannon, I don't know if you had to deal with this. I know when I had my oldest daughter, I was in the industry. My son I had prior to the industry, but my oldest daughter I had in the industry. And it was so funny trying to figure out maternity leave. And because our HR went, well, we've never had to deal with this before. And I'm like, you've never had to deal with a female they were like, well, it's always like their wives.
Oh my gosh, wow.
It was like, what? And listen, like by my last one, we actually had a space for pumping. That was like, oh, we have an actual space to pump. So yeah, that was an interesting one to see that the times of changing where it was. And we're like, we've never dealt with this. I'm like, surely there's been some woman somewhere in this company that has had a baby prior to me.
And I'm sure there was, and they just didn't notice.
But they were on like the husband's insurance because it was like customer service or something like that. And I was apparently in the group of, there was like 4 of us that all were pregnant and I was the first one. So yeah, it was things that nowadays, like I'm sitting there trying to explain to my son who he's like, I don't get paternity leave. And I'm like, baby.
Yeah. No, I was pregnant with my son in the industry. I was working for a different supplier at the time, and they were actually really good. They had a maternity leave policy. It was one of the better ones of like my friends that were pregnant at the same time. But for me, it was more like early on. I remember, I think I was maybe 10 weeks pregnant. Like my now ex-husband knew, and like maybe my sisters, but I hadn't even told my family. It was early on, and I had to go to this work dinner. And so first of all, I'm like putting on Spanx because I'm like maybe starting to show a little bit, or at least I really felt like I was. And then I had to sit there and fake drink for like 3 hours. So I had all these glasses of wine in front of me and like 11 dudes at the table and then just me. And they're like, gosh, do you not like the wines? And I'm just like picking them up and pretending to take a sip. And I'm like, oh, I've got to drive tonight. And just like the things that are more challenging for women anyway, but then you add the wine part into it and it's like, man, what am I doing here? But
yeah, I did with her, I was wine and spirits. I did both. And so there was always some event and I'm like looking at my husband going, what do I do? And he's like, Coyote Ugly it, babe. And I'm like, yep, shot, spit it into a beer.
Yeah, I would ask them to give me club soda like in the glass that looked like a vodka soda and just make it straight close. I knew all the tricks.
I did that too.
I just felt like I always had to fake it. Like to just say I'm not going to drink today. They're like, especially when you're 30, they're like, oh, so you're pregnant. It's like, it's really none of your business, actually. But
Yep.
I mean, that sounds crazy, guys. I can't even imagine. Like, it's like
Yeah, you kind of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
No, I
Alexandra.
was like, I had a friend on
Or
the wine
Christy.
side and a friend on the spirit side. We would like that knew, and we'd switch glasses sometimes if we were at an event together. And I'm like, so it kind of made it look like I was still drinking.
Oh my gosh, that's a good friend. That's a good friend right there. Shannon, I just wanted to briefly touch on, you mentioned earlier too, that's kind of like been exacerbated a little bit with the pandemic too, right?
oh my God, it's,
Oh.
I mean, it's, yeah, because whether I like it or not, and again, I'm divorced, so I don't have somebody else in the house, but I, like every day I've got my son that comes home, usually with one of the neighbors' kids, sometimes multiple neighbors' kids, because I'm the one who's been working from home for so long, and I've got, 2 dogs and a household to manage, and trying to balance all of that with the expectations of the job and trying to figure out how to see customers remotely. And I mean, it's just been madness. Hopefully we're getting to the place where maybe we can rear view mirror this a little bit and be like, oh my God, I actually survived all that, but it's too soon, I think.
Yeah, and even outside the pandemic, I had one year I was on a trip in Japan, and my little one at home started having a panic attack, and so I'm like on the FaceTiming her in Japan, trying to talk her through a panic attack while I'm like trying to find my train to get back to the airport in time. And I got done, I was like,
oh my God.
Mom of the year, did it,
Oh my gosh.
And I think we all do that as moms, like whether it's this industry or another industry, there's so much on moms nowadays, because we
So
do want to work,
much. Yeah.
and we do want to be successful. I mean, I'm the breadwinner in my family, and it's amazing. Like, I get pissed all the time when I hear on the radio, the guys on the radio saying like, oh, women never make more than men. I'm like, that's me. Hold on. Why can't I do this? Why is it not expected for me to do
What
this?
radio station are you listening to, Christy?
Yeah.
You are in Texas.
It's my husband listens to it. They're down here in San Antonio, but they are all over. It's what's it called? What is it? Billy Madison show? Oh, they drive me nuts. They're like, no woman ever mows, and I'm like
oh my gosh.
Like, what? My husband, he knows I get so mad listening to that show.
All right. Well, I do want to try to hear from some people we haven't, just because we don't have too long left. And Jenna, I know you have some forklift stories. Are people very amazed at how well you can drive a forklift? You're a girl?
This is true. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, at first I used to get really annoyed, and I work in our warehouse and oftentimes have to load trucks. And I used to get very annoyed when truck drivers would show up and they would be like, you know how to forklift? And I actually just started like playing a game with myself of like, yeah, I know how to forklift, and kind of just like make it funny instead of just taking offense. Because like it just happens so often. And I haven't broken anything ever, have it like pretty good on the forklift now. And there just have been like time in and time out where like it's unfortunate that I feel like I do have to just kind of change my mindset to match what's being like said to me. That being said, some of the truck drivers are wonderful. And so I think when I personally like tense up and I'm like, are they gonna say something to me? It always like makes it worse as well. And so just trying to go in and like be as positive as possible. And some of the truck drivers are just thoroughly impressed in general, and it's always kind of fun. So I try and play that game, and I think, yeah, just wanting to kind of change that for them. And anytime that they go, like, I just think about the kind of the next woman that they'll encounter that knows how to forklift as well, and maybe they won't say anything to them, and I got to change that And so the next woman like behind me got to experience that and not necessarily have to go through kind of what I did. But I do feel, I don't know if it's because I've worked longer and with the same people now, but it's not as much as an issue as when I started, which is really, really cool to even within like 2 years see that and be like, whoa, even in my small segment of the world, like I get to like change things and change people's minds. And it may seem silly, but oh, it's so annoying.
It's awesome. That's such a cool perspective.
That is awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Joan and Silka, do you guys have any perspectives from your world?
What do you got, Silka? Anything?
Not really. Maybe again, just as in general, and kind of the not only the wine world, but in the entire world, we've been seeing things getting a little bit better. Even though it's been slow, and I may be of the generation that hasn't seen the worst of it in the work industry. The work industry, the the job world. But yeah, I will say I did actually work in my first few months at Union. I did work a distributor fair, I think stepping in for Justin at one point, and I do remember that was very uncomfortable. Was not expecting it to be so uncomfortable, and it was the same thing. There was a lot of men in the room, a few women, but all the women were in like their heels, and I'm like, oh, I'm underdressed. And then it was not only like new to Union and kind of this, like entering the wine world again, but just having to pour and sort of, again, I think there was some uncomfortableness just because I was still learning the product and how to talk about it. But I remember that being very very interesting and just very, very aggressive, like men trying to welcome you to the club, but doing it in an inappropriate way.
Yeah, I had a similar experience to that when early on at one of those too, and I was so shocked. I mean, luckily we work for Union and we have it's casual setup. It's not so shishi as all of the other wineries, but I didn't wear heels or I wouldn't, right? It's not our company. But also I was, thank God it's not our company, but I was shocked at the difference of dress out there that is still required in this industry. I came from sports and fitness, and that's a whole different set of challenges for women. But at least the attire felt more normal. But I think my perspective is a little different too, because I think I'm the oldest person at Union Wine Company. So not only do I have, I haven't been in the industry very long, and I'm learning as fast as I can. I mean, there's no formal training at Union for our role, and you kind of learn as you can. But so not only is there some of that self-doubt, but now there's some age stuff going on that you get a little like, it's a little uncomfortable. You'll see someday, but it's unfortunate. I mean, not necessarily just in it's just everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not Union, but it's just not in particular. I mean, just everywhere. But I don't know. It's a whole new experience being older. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to get old. It didn't occur to me.
Just that having your decisions kind of questioned sort of thing, or Mm-hmm.
I would say so, definitely. Yeah, and same thing. I came like Meredith said, my mother was president of the League of Women Voters, the original feminists, but she didn't work outside the home too much, a little bit, but not a regular career. So there isn't I didn't have a lot to follow in that regard, But anyway, it's a little different.
Well, thanks. Colby and Cassidy, anything to add or that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, like what Jenna was saying just about the forklifting situation and having to change your mindset a little bit and laugh things off. I think before wine, I did a lot of service jobs as well, and you just deal with a lot of inappropriate comments and having to just laugh about it in the situation sometimes, because having like a freak out might make it worse. And I used to work at a coffee shop where I worked alone, I was closing by myself. So maybe saying something might cause a situation to make it worse. And yeah, feeling unsafe to say, like, to be able to speak up about it. So it sucks sometimes having to change your mindset and just feel like you have to laugh things off and not be able to speak up and maybe not necessarily freak out, but just make the person aware that they've offended you in a way that maybe they weren't even aware of. So, and then being that I work in the cellar too, yeah, it is physical, and you run into a lot of men who are like, "Oh, let me help you," and maybe they're just trying to be nice, and but if I want help, I'll ask for it, but I've been tomboy too, grew up on a farm, so just always out there working, doing super physical stuff, and I'm just used to it. And yeah, when I did my first harvest down in California is when I really started to notice. I had a full-time cellar worker employee. She was asking where I had applied before for internships, and I told her all these places and told her that I didn't get a lot of callbacks from a lot of places. And her husband owns a custom crush facility, and she was like, "Oh yeah, well, a lot of those places won't. They don't even call back women because they feel that having women in the cellar is distracting to the men, and that men don't get as much work done." And I just found that to be really terrible. Like, not my problem, that I should feel because I'm a woman that I'm distracting others. Like, they should get it together then. I'm out here doing my job the best of my abilities, and I'm working hard. So but yeah, I've also seen like these groups getting together, working in Washington. That's where I'm from, Eastern Washington area. So my first few harvests were there, and we also have like women in Washington wine. And we'd get together in groups like this, and there is a lot of improvement. And I've also had a lot of awesome male coworkers and peers that are super supportive. And yeah, I've seen a lot of growth in that aspect as well. So I'm hoping that it just keeps getting better for women in this industry. And yeah, look forward to the future for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I've had all odds against me, I like to think. I've had a lot of bad experiences, but the good have definitely outweighed the bad. I have been told that I'm too pretty to be smart, to be in a lab, to be a winemaker. I have had people at a winery I worked at, the person in charge, he didn't know that I had had experience in wine. So he put another guy intern in charge of me to make sure I was getting my work done, even though I had already done harvests like multiple times before. One thing that I actually deal with quite a bit is my name. I have a unisex name, and I get a lot of emails saying Mr. And like they only reply if they think I'm a man. And I have actually had to put like the she, her in my signature for my email because it's been mistaken. I don't even know how many times, honestly, that I am a female, not a male. And I have also dealt with a lot of of sexual harassment and sexual assault. And I always am too scared to speak up. And when I do, I'm the one that gets in trouble for it. Previous wineries I've worked for, I was never allowed to wear tank tops or shorts or leggings because that's inappropriate, but the males are allowed to wear whatever they want. So I would like do the high school thing where I would put my arms down by my side to measure how long my shorts were. But I have very long arms, so I ended up wearing jeans every single day because my I have like gorilla arms and my fingers basically touch my knees. So there's no way I could wear appropriate length shorts. Yeah, I've had a lot of things against me, but I am actually further in my career than anybody else has told me that I would never get to. I'm doing way better than anyone else could have expected. I am well on my way to being a winemaker eventually, where people have told me, like, I've been warned several times that women are not winemakers, but everywhere I worked, I have worked with a female winemaker. And I love working at Union because, I mean, you guys see how many females work here. I'm just really happy that I'm still doing this, even though I've been told not to.
Yeah, we are too. You're a badass. And I mean, you are not only in the wine industry, but you're like our enologist. So science, you do chemistry, right? Like that's
Yeah, exactly.
your job.
Like, are you sure that you know how to do math? And I'm like, sometimes I don't think I do. But I mean, that's why I'm here, right? Obviously, I'm good at what I do.
100%. Yeah. All right, Alexandra, do you want to take us home? Any final thoughts? I don't think we've heard from you, have we?
I've been enjoying listening to everyone. I mean, I think this is like really fascinating, like all these different perspectives. We've all come from different places that led us here. I guess I could kind of echo Jenna a little bit, and I admire her so much. Like, I am much more timid. Like, I don't deal with truck drivers too often, but sometimes they stumble in my office because they don't know where to go. And I, I get like the honey or darling, but like I just make the decision. I have to decide, like, do I say something? Like, I don't usually interact with this person. You just happen to stumble in here. It's not like Jenna, who interacts with this person more regularly. So I don't usually say something, but I always get upset with myself when I don't. So it's something I struggle with, but that's just my personality, insecurity. I was thinking about my background working at restaurants, and I have been so fortunate. I've never had a sexual assault, and like I've always been treated with respect, and I feel really grateful for that. I've had my managers and like Psalms have always been males, but they've always treated me with a lot of respect and like have, if anything, especially like at Charlie Trotter's, I have been like taken under their wing, and they have like coached me. Like they gave me opportunity. They made me like kind of like believe in myself. Like, you can do this. We're going to like advance you. I started as like a food runner. They made me a server. Like, I just felt like appreciated. So I've always had good experiences in restaurants. Yeah, and they've all been male, role models. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good that you got like some mentorship kind
Great
of.
mentors. Yeah, one especially, like I still am friends with, like just really appreciative of that person.
Great.
Well, I'm
Good.
playing that, Alexandra, like with getting upset with yourself for not saying something when someone calls you hun or darling, or like refers to you as a girl when it's like, I haven't been a girl for 20 plus years. Like, come on. But I think too, so many of us have so many really respectful, especially men in our lives, and people that's just not the norm for us. And so for me, a lot of times when somebody says those things to me, I'm so gobsmacked that I just don't even know how to react, because I typically don't have many people like that in my life. And so when I encounter them, in other settings where somebody says that, it's just like, wait, what? Did somebody really just say that to me? Like, and then it's, it doesn't occur to me until maybe 10 or 15 minutes later where I'm like, oh, I should have corrected him. But at the same time, it's like, wow, like probably why this person's still doing it is because the women they encounter like are just shocked when they do experience that. Because I think there have been a lot of changes to our culture towards women in professional fields and fields, like winemaking, which is really not nearly as glamorous as I think a lot of people think it is. It's dirty work and it's hard work. Many of us have come home covered in lees on more than one occasion, which is, not the most pleasant thing in your life. But I think it says a lot that those kind of comments still are things that do shock us, because they're not, an everyday experience for most of us, which is good, I think.
That's funny. I always tell my dad, like, he and his brothers were the ones who trained me for this job. Growing up on the farm, like these very farm guys, like I've had some buyers, say some pretty good things, and I always come back with some. Usually, the buyers to me were easier than the internal ones. Of course I'm the one that I'll say something. Like I had a fellow sales rep that always talked looking here. And so I started looking further down, and he was like, what are we doing? I was like, I just thought this is how we talk to each other. I was like, this is the way we do it, right? And he's like, what? So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I usually came back with some. It was usually, but it was the ones that you didn't expect that kind of, they would always catch you off guard. But in general, I would always come back with some kind of weird. But we're Southern, we do say honey, sweetie, darling. I say honey, sweetie, darling. So I will, but yeah, I told my dad all the time, I was like, you and your brothers are who taught me. And it's funny because even growing up in a house where my mom worked, but my dad sat at the table, my mom was supposed to serve him, all that kind of stuff. But it was weird that my dad also empowered me, because I was his youngest and I was his baby. And so my first marriage, I actually didn't hyphenate my name, and he was shocked because I was the one who he always expected to keep the name, and I was much more the boy, and I did construction in the house and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of funny how sometimes those are the men who, were shocked by, but at the same time, like I said, my dad, he always made sure like I wasn't allowed to drive until I knew how to change my tire and do this and do all that kind of stuff. And, if he and his brothers were going to go shooting, I'm like, oh, I'm going to come. And they're like, the brothers would go, oh, no, this is just for the boys. And my dad's like, nope, she's coming, So it's weird how that works. Somebody who does it at the same time empowered me to go up against those guys.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it is kind of like, like Jenna was saying, they're like, a lot of these truck drivers, for example, are really nice guys, for sure. I think half the time they don't even realize that. It's like, calling me dear isn't really great for me. Awesome. All right. Well, does anyone have any final thoughts that they want to share? Well, thank you guys so much for doing this. This was really, really interesting. And I just feel so lucky having had this conversation, going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, having the opportunity to do something like this and have this space and this village and this community to talk with is kind of incredible, and certainly encouraging. Definitely gives me hope for the future of women in wine. So yeah, thank you guys so much.
Nice to meet everyone.
Yes,
Yeah,
you too.
nice to meet you all. I haven't before. Okay.
Love it.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Well.